For some of us, these skills don't come to us as a surprise because these cards were leaked a couple of days ago. But for anybody that isn't up to speed, today we've got the reveal of Luard, and now we can ask the question, is Luard able to save this set?
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got the final VR revealed for VBT10 Phantom Dragon Aeon, and that is of course the second VR for Shadow Paladin, none other than Luard. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into these new cards, as we don't have 3 cards, but 4 cards to discuss in today's Cardfight update. So the first card that we're going to talk about is a brand new Grade 1 card that is vital for the Luard's archetype or the Luard playstyle, as we've got Dragwizard Morfessa, and its abilities are on a Vanguard circle. When placed, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 Dragheart Luard or Dragwizard Luard from among them, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. So Dragheart Luard is the new Grade 3 VR, and Dragwizard Luard, for anybody that isn't aware about this card, this is a Grade 2 double R from this set that allows you to search out any Grade 1 from your deck and superior call to the field if you place that card onto the field for a counterblast. So yet another good right option. And the reason why it is Dragwizard Luard instead of Morfessa, which is also one of the cards revealed today, is because Morfessa is a rearguard unit, and this card basically wants to help you to secure your right chain, your right targets for Grade 2 and Grade 3. And Luard is the more ideal Grade 3 right target, and Luard is a much better Vanguard right target than Morfessa, because Morfessa is a mainly rearguard unit. So that's the reason why they probably opted chose for Dragwizard Luard. And then the second ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed by your card's ability, costs +1, your opponent chooses one of his or her rearguards and retires it. So yet again, we've got the Shadow Paladin retire aspect that your opponent chooses, and it also has the restriction that it needs to be placed by a card's ability. This is much less of an issue with the latest support line for Shadow Paladin than it was in the past, because one of those cards is of course Dragwizard Luard, which Nice does search out for itself, so you could potentially then next turn right Luard, call out a Dragwizard Nice, and then use its ability to snipe one of your opponent's rearguard units and basically get more value in the early game. So Dragwizard Nice is a nice addition to Luard. It's mainly going to be run for a consistency option, as it allows you to get to Luard on a more consistent basis, and it, together with Brandman, gives you a lot of good options and consistency tools to get to your Grade 3. Then for the new Grade 2, we of course got Dragwizard Morfessa, and this is one of the more anticipated cards for Luard, as we were assuming this is going to be a pivotal card for the engine, and it is, because of the following skills: continuous on Rearguard Circle and deck. If you have a Vanguard with Luard in its card name, this unit gets Grade -1. So this is interesting because the original Morfessa worked in the drop zone where it was counted as Grade 1, so it could help you with your ritual count. This is the opposite way around, because now it works as a Grade 1 rearguard as well as from deck, which also helps quite nicely with Luard because the whole engine revolves around superior calling Grade 1s. So now you can also call Morfessa, and it also works around the fact that you have multiple Grade 1s in the field, and Morfessa will also count towards that, which is actually pretty nice. But Morfessa has one more trick up her sleeve, and this allows you to unleash even more multi-attacks in Shadow Paladin, as she has the second ability, which is Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked. If you have 4 or more rearguards with original Grade 1, so this means actual Grade 1, she doesn't count herself or another copy of herself, and then cost counterblast 1 and retire this unit, and call to 1 Grade 1 from your drop zone to the rearguard circle. So this allows you to trade in herself for another Grade 1 from your drop zone and then unleash multi-attacks, which is actually pretty nice. And if you have multiple force markers underneath her, which probably is going to be the main tactic here, then those numbers and those attacks will actually come in with a decent amount of pressure behind them. And because you call from the drop zone, it allows you to reuse certain on-place effects to get more value, or do some interesting options or tech plays with other Grade 1s that are in this set already revealed and released for Shadow Paladin. So a pretty good, nice addition. But interesting enough, because this multi-attack skill isn't restricted to Luard, you could potentially utilize Morfessa in a Phantom Blaster Overlord deck. Because Phantom Blaster Overlord himself can already generate the 4th attack, but if you have a Morfessa in your hand, because you need to hard draw into Morfessa in that deck, then you could potentially put Morfessa onto the field, attack with it, then get another attack off it, and then afterwards utilize Overlord to get another attack. So instead of 4 attacks, you could potentially have 5 attack in that specific build. This isn't the case for Luard though, because of Morfessa's restriction, as it needs to have 4 original grade 1s. So even if you have 2 Morfessas in the front row, they cannot utilize the skill, which is pretty obvious because otherwise you could unleash a lot of powerful attacks very easily. So very interesting, pretty strong. It also isn't too overpowered because the fact that its condition for that it counts as a grade 1 is restricted to Luard means you cannot cheat out Morfessa in the early turns, which is a good way to balance this particular card. Now with those 2 support cards out of the way, let's take a look at the 2 new Luards. And yes, there are 2 new Luards because Luard is going to work with Dragdriver Luard, and we're going to see in very much detail how this new deck is going to function and where the power potential lies. And this could also give us some insight to future support for a different clan, which needs to happen now because there is no more excuse for this. So the new VR for Shadow Paladin is of course Dragheart Luard. And Dragheart Luard has the following abilities: act on Vanguard Circle, once per turn cost retire 2 grade 1 rearguards, draw a card, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So this skill allows you to trade in 2 of your own grade 1 rearguards for a draw, and then you can snipe one of your opponent's rearguards. So in card economy wise, you break even because you go -2, but then +1, which is a -1, and then you -1 your opponent, so that equals out to a 0. But interesting enough, this card is the only Shadow Paladin card that allows you to choose which cards you retire. So you now actually have pinpoint removal, which can be pretty strong in the right circumstances. But actually, this card isn't a break even. You get actually more value, but we go over that in a second. Then its main attraction lies in the second ability, which is act on Vanguard Circle once per turn. This ability cost is reduced by Counterblast 1 for each grade 1 in your drop zone. Cost, Counterblast free, return 2 normal units from your drop zone to your deck, search your deck for up to 1 Dragdriver Luard, write it as stand, and shuffle your deck. At the end of this turn, write a Dragheart Luard from your soul at rest. So there's a lot to unpack here. First off, this skill costs a Counterblast free, but for every grade 1 in your drop zone, this will go down 1 Counterblast. So if you have 0 grade 1s in your drop zone, it costs 3 Counterblast. Do you have 1, it costs 2 Counterblast. Do you have 2, it costs 1 Counterblast. And if you have 3 grade 1s, it then is free. And even more grade 1s, it stays free. It doesn't go to minus Counterblast. That doesn't exist. That's countercharging. But this, in most cases, will, in the first turns, probably be around Counterblast 2, Counterblast 1. It's almost never going to be a Counterblast free because, at the very least, you can Soul Blast your grade 1 that you ridden very early on because there are a lot of cards in Shadow Paladin that uses Soul. So it shouldn't be Counterblast free, but probably at the very least be Counterblast 2. But the other aspect of this skill is basically the exact same thing that we've seen for Gear Chronicle. You write a specific card from your deck, and at the end of the turn, you pick a grade 3, or in this case, you pick the original Luard, and then write it on top. So you write this card, get a force marker, then superior write into this new card, which is a grade 3 with a force marker, but we go over there in a second. Then at the end of the turn, you write back into Dragheart Luard and get another force marker. This is very similar to what Gear Chronicle does. So with it explained, let's take a look at Dragdriver Luard to have an understanding of where we're actually building up to. So the next card and the final card that was revealed today is Dragdriver Luard. And first off, it's a grade 3 with a force marker. So this basically allows you to go into Dragheart Luard, get a force marker, use the ability to go into Dragdriver Luard, get another force marker, and at the end of the turn, go back into Dragheart Luard and get another force marker. So this means it does exactly what Gear Chronicle does, but Gear Chronicle get 1 less force marker because of the reason they are grade 4s and it should be too powerful. Yeah, that argument is now thrown out of the window here. I expect, and I expected a bare minimum, Bushiroad, that from this point onward, in future support set for Gear Chronicle, that our Great Force are gonna have force markers, because this is ridiculous. If Shadow Paladin allows to get this superior force marker generation with Mordred, with Phantom Blaster Overlord, and now also with Luard, yeah, you at the very least could give us that extra force marker. Now, with that rant over, let's take a look at Dragdriver Luard's actual skills, because the extra force marker is nice, but you're gonna mainly play because of its following abilities. Its first ability is Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, this unit gets power plus 5k for each of your grade 1 rearguards. If you have 2 or more grade 3 cards in your soul, the original critical of all your grade 1 rearguards becomes 2. So this in itself is going to be a massive beatstick in a correct field setup, as it can easily get plus 10k or maybe even plus 25k. So you don't have to put the force markers underneath your Vanguard, but you can put them onto the rearguard. And with something like Morfessa that multi-tags, that's actually something you want to do. But because of its following effect of this skill, that if you have 2 grade 3s in your soul, that the original critical of your grade 1s becomes 2, means you're not going to play Force 2 because those becomes ineffective, but you're going to play Force 1, and with all the extra force markers you're going to generate, that's actually what you want to do. And because those grade 1s now swinging with double crit, giving all those Force 1s to the rearguards actually gives you a lot of value, because you can pressure your opponent with double crit attacks very effectively, especially with Morfessa, because Morfessa, don't forget, count as a grade 1, so it also gets the additional extra critical via Dragdriver Luard, and then that card goes into another grade 1, which will then also swing with the double critical. And if that's on top of 2, 3, 4 force markers, then it comes swinging quite hard, even though it might be a grade 1. So there is a lot of value within this particular skill. The only downside to this skill in particular is that it's very unlikely that you're going to get the extra critical on the first grade 3 turn, because if you go into Dragheart, then you go into Dragdriver, and that's only 1 grade 3 in soul, so it's very hard to actually get this off. But there are some options which we go over after I explain this skill in more detail. Then the second ability of Dragdriver Luard is Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1. Search your deck for up to the number of cards in your soul with Luard in their card name plus 1 grade 1 cards, call them to the Vanguard Circle, and shuffle your deck. So what this skill basically does, it allows you to superior call a X amount of grade 1s to the field for 1 counterblast. So the bare minimum of what you can call is 1 grade 1, because if you, for example, write Dragdriver Luard as your first grade 3, you have 0 Luards in your soul, but it is the amount of Luards plus 1 of the amount of grade 1s you're going to call. So at the very least, you're going to call 1 grade 1, which isn't that great, but at least you get some value out of it if you want to resolve the skill. In the ideal setup, you go into Dragheart, then Dragheart goes into Dragdriver, and that means you have 1 Luard in your soul, so for 1 counterblast, you superior call 2 grade 1s. And this is actually pretty good in combination with Dragheart Luard, because, as we explained, Dragheart Luard has the skill that it can sack off, retire 2 of its own grade 1s to draw a card, and then retire 1 of your opponent's rearguards. Then with Dragdriver Luard, you actually can then superior call those grade 1s back to the field and basically be where you started, but you actually gain some value because you got the draw and you retired something off your opponent's field for basically the value of 1 counterblast. But as the game progresses, you get more and more Luards in your soul, and that means this skill only becomes more powerful the longer the game progresses, and you can actually just call an entire field for 1 counterblast. Now, what's interesting and really powerful around Luard and Luard is that, for one, we have this interaction between Luard can sack off its own field and then make room for Dragdriver to then superior call a new field and actually get value off of doing that. So there's a lot of value happening here. But on top of that, Dragheart Luard can easily search out Dragdriver Luard just like how Gear Chronicle does with the grade 4. But on top of that, Dragheart Luard shoves 2 normal units from the drop zone back into the deck every time you do so. This is incredibly powerful because it removes something like a quickie worker, which was needed in Gear Chronicle, as every time you can just put the Dragdriver back into the deck if you miss any target and then superior call it directly via skill. And at the same time, you can put back grade 1 targets if you need so. And in the case you still have Dragdriver in your deck, then you can just put those grade 1s that you just sacrificed for Luard's first ability back into the deck, and then you can actually get those 2 exactly specific 2 cards back onto the field if you desire to do that. So there is a lot of value happening with Luard, and it just can keep the ball rolling and rolling for longer prolonged times of the games. And this is pretty reminiscent of what Luard did back in the Jira. However, it isn't as infinite as it was back then, because there's definitely an issue with potentially deck out if games go too long. Now the question is Luard going to be the savior of this set? It probably is, because unlike all the other cards that we've seen for the different decks so far, for Tachikaze, Spike Brothers, Mega Colony, and even Phantom Blaster Overlord, Luard has a lot of options and a lot of different deck designs. Shadow Paladin has now a surplus of ways to build their decks, and I'm not referring to the fact that they have Clarence Dragon, Mordred Phantom, Phantom Blaster Overlord, and a Luard. I'm mainly looking at Luard itself, because Luard with this whole engine is so versatile. You can go for the pure Luard route, so the cards that we discussed today, and go with the main grade 1 bulk line. But even within that specific archetype or that specific place of pure Luard, you can go very different approaches. You can go for a very aggressive grade 1 lineup. You can go for a grade 1 lineup with Nemain, so you can flood the board early on with Nemain and filter your deck very aggressively. You can also go for a more prolonged game plan with something like Black Sage Charon, as well as Dark Nightmare Painter, because those cards allow you to get Soul and Counterblast, as resources are quite tiresome for Luard. Those cards can help you to keep fueling your engine and keep going turn after turn, so you can go that route. But a lot of people have also been speculating about combining the superior right engine of Phantom Blaster Dragon with Luard and then utilize best of both worlds. And it's definitely possible, because you can just run one copy of the grade 1 that allows you to get Blaster Dark, or get Phantom Blaster Dragon, get one copy of the Blaster Dark Searcher, and basically have the main, and then also one copy of Blaster Dark and one copy of Phantom Blaster Dragon himself. So you need 4 specific cards, and then of course Nemain, and there's a highly likely chance you're already going to run Nemain. Then the only thing that you need to do is open Nemain, and you can basically superior right very early on. And then from Phantom Blaster Dragon, you can go into Luard, and then from Luard you can go into Dragdriver, which then incidentally allows you to get the double crit on the same turn that you would normally go into Luard. So there is definitely some value to be had here. And on top of that, you get the 1 extra force marker. So on the very first grade 3 turn, you will have triple force markers on probably one column that will be having a Morfessa that then multi-tags. So there's definitely potential here. But even with all those potential, there is one problem that is gonna face Luard, and that might or might not be an actual thing. Because there is one particular card in the existence of Standard that can screw over Luard big times. Because a lot of the value behind Luard will be in the Soul department. Because the superior right engine is mainly revolving around Soul. Something like the grade 1 that retires revolves around Soul. And if you want to have the countercharger, that also revolves around Soul. But on top of that, Luard really looks to the amount of grade 3s that are in the Soul and the amount of Luards in the Soul to get more value. If those cards are out of the Soul, then the deck really falls down and isn't as powerful. So you need to be very careful with your Soul count and how many you're going to Soul Blast. But there is one card in the game that actually just removes the cards from the Soul, especially with the way that the deck functions. And I'm talking about Stringent Deleter Igirma. And I already discussed this card in the Link Joker set review for the previous set, that this card could be very powerful and meta divining if we get to a meta where we strive away from searching for X amount of cards on top of a deck and actually just searches specific cards. And what does Luard do? It mainly searches for specific cards. It searches for the Luard Dragdriver, which is a specific search, and Dragdriver himself searches for grade 1s, which are specific searches. And on top of that, we've got multiple cards like the grade 2 Leofal that searches for a grade 1. We have multiple grade 1s that searches for grade 1s. We have Nemain that searches for other cards with 5k power. So this will force you to Soul Blast extra cards every single time that you do perform one of those searches. And the only way that you can get rid of the Stringent Deleter Igirma is with Luard's specific retire skill. But if you're up against Link Joker and Messiah is definitely meta relevant, they can just run maybe 2, maybe even 3 copies if they want to tag it in just for this matchup if Luard's actually going to be meta defining. And they can just keep reoccurring those cards into the board. And the Luard player is forced to get rid of it. But if the Luard player is forced to get rid of that particular card, then the Luard player has no actual room to get rid of the Volko Geet grade 4 unit, which probably is more valuable to the Link Joker player. And even then, Alter Ego can just keep putting the grade 1 back onto the board every single turn. And if the Link Joker player gets the Igirma early on, like on turn 1 or maybe even turn 2 potentially, they can just shut down the entire Superior Right Chain if that's going to be included in a Luard deck, because Nemain needs to search out those specific copies. But if they use Nemain, they are forced to Soul Blast 1 card, and the whole Superior Right engine costs Soul. So if they use Nemain to search out the first piece on turn 1, then they lose their first Soul, and they can no longer use Soul Blasting and Retiring skill because they have no Soul. So depending on the scenario and the timing, that card could just shut down the entire Superior Right Chain and could potentially hinder Luard quite considerably, as it might be forced to Soul Blast the Great Freeze, which Luard definitely not want to do. So it's an interesting thought. I'm not sure if this card actually gonna be played in Link Joker and Messiah to actually combat Luard, but it's definitely something that a Luard player might need to think about if they actually are going to be a meta-defining deck and Messiah keeps sticking around and they have the opportunity and the room to actually tag in this card to deal with Luard. So overall, I'm pretty excited and stoked about this reveal. Luard is actually a pretty interesting deck. It has a lot of options and different lines of plays that you could take approaches to the deck. There are definitely more than one way that you can build this deck, and I don't think there's one correct answer in piloting Luard. You can opt to go for Phantom Dragon with the Superior Right Chain. It definitely has some merits, but it also has some flaws because that will hamper more on Soul, and also because you're probably gonna run one-offs. One hitting the damage zone could shut down that engine and might hamper you, but then again, it's just 4 cards in your deck, so what can those 4 cards do actually if those are becoming vanilla, because you can still use them as discard fodder or something. So there are definitely a lot of interesting things, and I want to know what you guys think of these new cards for Shadow Paladin. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new cards for Shadow Paladin. Do you think that Luard actually is the savior of this set that it was looking for, or do you think that this set was already pretty good to begin with cards like Rising Nova, with Gaia, as well as with probably some people's queen, that is Gradora. And of course, don't forget Phantom Blaster Overlord. That is something to stick around with Luard. So let me know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. And as always, guys, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply do that by going over to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!